Welcome to the Never Seen It Film Club, where we watch the films that you've never seen. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Robert J. Simpson from Cinepunkt, and joining me today, as ever, is the delectatious, the fabulous, the ostentatious Emma Bainbridge from Accidental Theatre.
Hello! That was very good. I enjoyed that intro, and now I know why you like it so much.
I thought if we mix things up a little bit every now and then, you get to have your ego flattered a little bit.
Hi, everybody. I'm all about the ego stroking, as you know.
Well, we aim to please.
Well, thank you very much for that delightful intro. I enjoyed it.
5 minutes ago, she had a face like a slapped arse, and now look at her. She's grinning. So, this week, this time, we are watching The Burbs, the 1989 Joe Dante film starring Tom Hanks, Carrie Fisher, Bruce Dern, and a load of other interesting people. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah, I have, but very, very long time ago. So it was nice to revisit it because I'd kind of forgotten all about it, if I'm honest.
Oh, excellent. Well, just in case you want to know what you're missing, insert trailer here.
This is what I need, Carol. I need this.
Welcome to Mayfield Place. A typical street in the Burbs,
Morning, Walter.
where nothing much ever happened
Walter's dog just took a dump on Rumsfield's lawn again.
until the Klopeks moved in.
Klopeks?
Klopeks. Klopek. No one goes in, no one comes out.
Neighbors from hell.
It was a nice place to live,
He said he thinks the Klopeks are evil incarnate.
Well, you're much too smart to fall for that, aren't you, honey?
but now
Carol!
you wouldn't want to visit there.
Ray, this is Walter.
The Burbs,
I'm going over the fence, and I'm not coming back till I find a dead body.
Ray, do you want him to take your family, kidnap them, tear their livers out, and make some kind of satanic pate? We found Walter!
We got a real problem.
I hit the gas line, I'd run!
God, I love this street.
Tom Hanks,
I think we are overreacting.
No.
The Burbs. It's one hell of a neighborhood.
Hey, honey, I think we should move.
That gives you a little bit of an idea about The Burbs. So this is a film that I have to say I very fondly remembered. It is... I don't know if it's just because of the era that this is. So obviously the films that we're covering... Some of the films that we're covering at the moment are from this sort of golden era of 1988, 1989, into the 80s. And I was a kid.
I was being born.
This is why. This is why we're picking it right.
Because 88 to 89, clearly the best year ever. Because I arrived. Hi.
I don't know. So my brother and sister arrived. Was that the best year ever? Or was that the worst?
I mean, you give me one good intro, and all of a sudden I'm like, the 80s was the best because I was here.
Just about tail end of. So I was a kid at the time, but this was one of the films I remember watching. I didn't go see it in the cinema. I saw it on VHS first. We rented it probably from Family Viewing, which was a video store in the Strandtown area of East Belfast.
What's a video store? I'm too young. I
Video
wouldn't know.
store.
I
Do you
wouldn't
remember
know.
Extravision? Just about.
No, I'm too young.
Such a liar.
I am lying. Of course, Extravision, the best thing ever.
So it was, I think I would have watched it from there, and then I've seen it multiple times on TV in the years since, and I mean, it's been a little while since I last viewed this. I think the last time I looked at this was probably when I was doing a review of all of Joe Dante's films, or some of Joe Dante's films, for a project I was looking to do. Mm-hmm. So it had been a few years, but I rewatched this a couple of nights ago with the current other half, and who had also seen it before but had completely forgotten about it. And I have to say, it stands up really, really well. I think I give it a 4.5 out of 5 on my letterbox because I enjoyed it that much all over again. There's not an awful lot I would change about it. It still feels like a really good, fun film, and I think part of that is it's the same reason that they were attracted to getting Joe Dante as a director in the first place. Mm-hmm. This is a film that combines this sort of family-friendly, kind of wonderful, banal suburbia with this deeply dark gothic undertone. And, you know, you stick some sort of gothic surrealism in anything and I am there. And this is, you know, from the director that had given us already the weirdness of Gremlins and of Inner Space and Piranha. So I was well up for it.
Yeah, I the first time I came to it was because I'm young and I've never seen anything. No, it's because Joe Dante directed The Hole. So the whole
that way around.
Yes, I'm a backwards person. So take that as you will, guys. In a lot of, a lot of people would agree.
That was more information than I needed today. Thank you.
Anyway, no. So I'd seen The Hole in 2009. Loved it. It's one of my favorite horror films. And again, not a horror film. Psychological thriller, I would describe it as. It's genuinely one of my favorite films. And again, didn't realize that it was a Joe Dante film. First of all, I was like, I don't know who this man is. Who are you, Joe Dante? Because I was a young film student and I thought I knew everything. But of course I knew nothing. I was like Jon Snow. I knew absolutely nothing. So then again, going through the back catalogue and then being like, it's the Gremlins guy. Yeah, okay, understand now. So that was the last time I watched it, and I remember very similarly loving the mixture of just the black horror and the superb mundaneness of the first half of that film, where it just is a perfect snapshot into everything that's terrible about suburbia and everything I remember from suburbia as a child.
See, this thing, I didn't grow up in suburbia. We lived outside of suburbia. So there was our little house and then it was
10 miles.
It wasn't 10 miles, but like, you know, it was a few minutes walk not a few minutes walk, but it was a little walk to get to the next house. And it was sort of in the fringe of the countryside. So suburbia was this weird space that I wasn't really properly aware of. And so, I mean, you already had kind of feelings about your kind of neighbours anyway. And, you know, creepy houses always kind of attracted me. You know, I grew up on a diet of Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo, reruns of The Addams Family and The Munsters.
Yeah.
So, you know, the kind of the creepy, gothic, slightly fallen apart house where nothing grows in the garden is such a staple, and it's always an indicator that something bad is going to happen. It's like the classic, the old dark house. So you kind of you feel that anyway, and then you kind of move to suburbia, as I eventually did do, and you realize that, you know, like even where I live now, you know, we're in this little kind of enclave of other houses, and I haven't a clue who most of my neighbours are. I mean, if you're watching any neighbours by any chance, I'm sorry, I'm really antisocial. It's not that it's deliberate,
it's not
but
it's me.
It definitely is me. So if you want to come over and say hello, I'll probably respond to that better. I'm not good at
just
initiating.
Don't come over. You're not welcome.
Well, that's how I feel about Halloween trick-or-treaters. But
Get out! No.
No. So I mean, but suburbia does offer you this kind of thing where you realize you've got these communities that are forced upon each other, but you don't always know what's going on next door, and anything that's at all different, as the Klopeks are in this, makes you feel. It brings out the worst in people. It brings out all their paranoias. It brings out their fears. And this is such a great kind of distillation of it. But I also think that this is a very Joe Dante kind of space to be in. The other thing this massively makes me think of from his body work is Erie, Indiana. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen it.
Oh, thank goodness. A great kind of kids show, but it's wonderfully dark, wonderfully weird. And that is all about being a child. And questioning everything that's in your neighborhood. And the characters in this, Tom Hanks and Bruce Dern and Rick DeCommon, essentially act like massive children.
Yeah.
They are hugely irresponsible, hugely speculative, and just slightly unhinged.
Only a little bit. I mean, again, what I quite like about the film is that the wives, as in every comedy, every show ever, are just the roots of, would you fuck up? Like, they're just the anchors of everything. Like, so the men go off and, as you said, are giant children. Like, Tom Hanks is essentially Homer Simpsoning his way through logistics of, like, thinking and trying to be a detective. That's cruel. He's not the Homer Simpson. He is Fred Flintstone is too smart to be Homer Simpson, but the neighbour's definitely Homer Simpson.
Neighbours definitely. He's a bit more of a Barney Rubble.
Yeah.
You know, he's a kind of an unwitting companion. Clearly has an ounce of sense, but somehow gets derailed.
Yeah, that's probably more fair. But yeah, just the fact that, as you said, they're like so paranoid so fast by the other, and I'm like, oh, is that what white men are like in general? Do they not like things that are slightly different from themselves?
Well, I mean, the last film that we talked about was Beetlejuice,
I mean,
where we talked about issues of color and this is another film of white suburbia.
It is white, but
this is properly white suburbia. There's not a person
no, there's
of
any kind of vague ethnicity in this, which I kind of love the fact that it is just shows the craziness of white suburbia. Because when I was growing up, because we moved around quite a bit, the Klopeks is like when we moved into neighborhoods, we were those other weird family because we weren't fully established. Like my dear old departed father, when he was he used to tell this story about when we lived in Somerset. He used to go to the pub and no one would talk to him because he hadn't lived in the community for 25 years.
Wow.
That was the minimum that you were allowed to go play. Like he would put, like, there used to be a thing where you put your darts down to be like, oh, I'm next. Who's playing next? And he did that. And a man just like got them and slid them back across the table to them and just said, no. Slid back. And he was like, okay then, that's weird. I mean, Somerset's kind of the other way around. So we were kind of like the suburbanites moving into like just like a village full of the Klopekses because they're all fucking weird. There, no harm. Somerset, you can't even come at me for that one. You know yourself. Jesus. But even like Lisburn, like moving to Lisburn, when you have a vaguely othering accent, you become the scary, weird thing at the end of the street.
But I don't think that's unique to Lisburn or Somerset.
It's really not. I think it's just suburbia.
But it's not even suburbia. I think suburbia is essentially a village.
Yeah.
You know, they're all little village enclaves that are kind of joined at the outer realms of your.
We cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Like a cul-de-sac's a village in its own right. You get to the end of the cul-de-sac, you're in the kind of no man's land.
Yeah, you're in a
and then to the
different
next
city.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
I heard some of our neighbours the other day who are in a house behind us. Like, we have no idea who they are. Never met them, never seen them. Occasionally I hear a voice. But you realise, like, they're as close to us as the people that I can see coming in and out of their drive.
Yeah.
But we have no idea. They're just this disembodied thing. And there's that weird thing about shared spaces. And so anywhere where you've got a group of people together where there is somebody that you're not familiar with or keeps themselves to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where this one starts from, is the Klopeks essentially are socially awkward.
Yeah.
They're like me. They're socially awkward. So, like...
They're not friends.
No, and they want to, like, they're minding their own business is how it sort of feels. They just happen to make a lot of noise at night.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the noise disturbances, I think they might have got away with it.
This is very fair. Are we sympathising with the wrong people in this film? We know how it ends.
We know how it ends, which is part of the, I suppose, part of the problem. And please, if you haven't seen it, go and watch it and then come back to this, so we can talk about the rest of the film. I think the thing for me is I mean, this ties into a very, very old trope about the other and about foreign nationals. And I think because of the timing of this is the end of the 1980s, it's still a generation who remembers everything from the war and the immediate aftermath of that and the influx of Europeans into America, some of whom did not have good intentions.
I know who you are.
So I mean, I think that kind of fear exists anyway, and it's very, very obvious that there's a kind of, they're being poked at because they're Germanic.
Yeah. Which I kind of find interesting that they weren't Russian, because there was a lot of that going on in the 80s in media of like, beware the Russians.
Beware the Russians, yeah. But I think in horror
it's always the Germans.
It's the Germanic countries. I mean, that's where...
I mean, to be fair, they are scary.
All the Universal horrors are set, all the Hammer horrors are set in this sort of weird Eastern Europe of an undefined... And it tends to be the more Germanic sounding places. Even though I think the undercurrent of this as well, and looking at the biographies of some of the people like Brother Theodore is, Brother Theodore who plays Reuben. Klopek was himself, basically a concentration camp survivor as a Jew, and you're aware that there's an awful lot of that kind of movement as well, and that fear is interesting. That you kind of you project those anxieties onto people, and maybe the story is more complex. So I think there's a little bit. What I'm trying to get at is I think there's a little bit of racism undercutting this whole story. But it doesn't stop it from being quite funny, because what we're doing for most of the part is laughing at the ineptitude of these vigilante men who are rapidly approaching middle age.
Yeah, they just need something to do, bless them. Could take up bowling, but nah, they're just going to spy on their neighbours instead and go and come up with crazy theories. I mean, to be fair, it is the dog's fault. Why is the dog just so cute? Why is there always a cute little crusty white dog in these things?
I think the surprise for me is it's always finding out that Walter has a family, because I kind of see him walking around with his little white fluffy floof and his toupee, and I assume that Walter is a gay man, and that he's the gay man at the end of the close, and
I mean that hair. It could, like, you know what? There are lavender marriages all over the place. I feel like it. Yeah, to be honest, I always kind of got that, like, whenever you see a single man in a film with a dog, like that's like a cute dog. I think it's always implied that he's maybe a little bit homosexual, but we're not going to talk about that. And that he's alone and like he's got no family, and like we have to look after Walter. Do you? Because you don't really know Walter.
Apparently not.
Terribleness. Terrible. This is what happens when you don't meet your neighbours.
I'm not going to meet my neighbours. They can let themselves be known in their own time. We've just had someone move in next door, and I'm trying to work out the appropriate point at which we kind of go, hello.
It's never say hello, because you never know who they are.
No, you don't. So I love this sort of depiction of suburbia. I love that it plays on I think most of our fears about our neighbours and people that we don't know, and I like the bizarreness of it all, and the ramping up to a point where people are being encouraged to housebreak, which is of course exactly what you're. I think that's my fear, is that actually it's our neighbours are ganging up to housebreak us
because you're the weird goss. Live next door. See, I don't have this problem because from the outside, my house looks very normal, and I don't have anything in my windows that would say a weird goth lives here. But if I do, this might get cut out, but I do frequently, if I have workmen in, I have a lot of very cool vintage Betty Page photos in my bedroom. Ooh. And if you know who Betty Page is, you'll understand. Fetish photography, very cool, very vintage and artistic, not pornography, thank you very much. But I'm very aware of the aesthetic of like a man coming in and being like, oh dear. I mean, the other room where all my fetish gear actually is, that doesn't help. But the photographs can come down. But yeah, it is this thing of like, what's behind door number 3? It's all, because all you do see of your neighbours, usually, unless you're weird swinger pineapple types, which, why, no. Is you see them come out of their door, you see them go in their door, and you get like a glimpse of their existence behind closed doors. You don't often, for me anyway, I don't often be like, oh, they dress a certain way, so they must be, they're going to be non-threatening, scary people. I'm the other way around. If I see someone who comes out who looks absurdly normal, I'd be like, serial killer.
Well, I mean, one of the things that Dana Olsen, the screenwriter, talks about is the origins of this coming from his own experiences within suburbia living, and the revelation that somebody in the neighbourhood had been essentially a serial killer, and that realisation that happens surprisingly frequently, maybe especially in the United States. I'm not sure if that's a caveat with this.
I don't think it needs to be a caveat. The United States certainly does have a very high ratio of serial killers compared to, I think they're number 2.
I mean, I feel in Northern Ireland you've probably got somebody on the street who was involved in some illegal operation during the 70s, and
but we don't talk about that.
No, and may or may not have done things. So I suppose a lots and lots of communities have it, and again, it's that thing, you don't know your neighbours, but actually, it's not that unfeasible to think that your neighbours might have done something hideous.
Yeah.
Or might be in the process of doing something hideous.
I feel like my disappointment with... I think we can spoil a film that's over 30 years old,
we can.
right?
Oh, we've told them to go and watch it, so yeah.
Go watch it. Pause here if you haven't. But I think my disappointment with the ending is the fact that it turns out Tom Hanks is right, but for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, I would love it if it had have been one of the other neighbours. I would actually have loved it if Walter had turned out to be a serial killer. That's the real twist ending. Like, the weirdos are actually just weirdos because they just don't want to hang out with you Americans who judge everybody. But like Mr. Whitebread next door, he's off bumping off grannies left and right.
Yeah, it does make me feel slightly uneasy knowing that essentially when you've got a film that is picking on somebody who's different as being a bit suspect just because they're different, that you end up saying they are. I mean, it's very caricature esque. It's very two-dimensional. It's very, very basic. And yet, I think it satisfies me enough. I know that they shot 3 different endings for this, one of which includes Tom Hanks just getting killed and them driving off without anyone being aware that the Klopeks had actually done anything.
Which I think would have been a better ending, but that's just me.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I know part of the problem with Tom Hanks at this point is his career is on the up and up. He's Mr. Nice Guy. It doesn't feel like you can have him in bad parts at that point, but also I think you kind of have to accept this as being an extension of a certain kind of filmmaking. If you take it as an extension of certain earlier prejudices and earlier stereotyping, it makes sense. Essentially, you've got the mad scientist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mad scientist story, just with the mad scientist. Even though we're introduced to him as a doctor.
I mean...
Germanic doctor. Thinking of anyone? Frankenstein, maybe? We know this is what he is. We've got a weird inbred-looking nephew. I mean, if he's not the product of 2 siblings mating...
Or an experiment.
So you know it's very clearly signposted what they are, and in that context, I think the ending is fine. Yeah, because they are the mad scientist and the creations, and the you know it's I mean, I suppose Hans is like the Igor of that group
for sure.
You know, except he's lugging them out in a car rather than sort of actually putting some effort into things with the corpses. So in that context, yes, I have no problem with that ending, and it's not. It makes sense.
It does make sense, but yeah, part of me does want like a double twist where Tom Hanks is actually the serial killer and he's doing all this to cover his tracks, or that he has a split personality. But then again, that has become a trope. So I'm just like, okay, maybe we just leave it alone.
I mean, they were never happy with their ending for this.
No, I mean, no.
There was a writer's strike. There was other issues with it. They sort of ad-libbed a bit on the spot. At least the ending that we have, I watched one of the alternate endings, but at least the ending that we've got actually gives us a nice bit of play. It also gives us a really nice scene with Rance Howard, Ron Howard's father. And I like those kind of character moments as well. And again, for me, I suppose it's that harkening back to the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking. You know, there are people there as part of his rep company. Yeah. And that... Oh, I let that override any sense of judgment and critical thinking I have on this. I've got to be honest. I'm probably just a little bit too carried away and enthused.
I mean, that's fair. It is like, what I do love is the characters in this film are just absolutely so well thought out and well executed. I mean, like, Bruce Dern is possibly my favorite thing in this film. I just like, and again, I can't remember if this is the first instance, but again, that it has become a trope. Crazy ex-military neighbour who still thinks he's in the service. I can't think of a film beforehand that maybe would have this in, apart from Mary Poppins, but that's different. I need
to think. I'm on the spot
but
here. But
I think this is definitely one of the better ones, the better executions of it, because he is, and his hot MILF wife, as Corey Feldman likes to flirt with, have some of my favorite. But I think he is just great in this. And then there's lovely moments of him just being very competent and very good at being like himself, but then also just ridiculous moments where it's like, you know, we can see you on the roof. That's not maybe the greatest vantage point when you're trying to spy on people. Because like Corey Feldman is constantly like, hey, and I'm like, okay, maybe he's not great. But even Tom Hanks, I think as you said, like before, I think this is it, where he's like, this is the first kind of instance of him being less than Mr. Perfect. Like he does he does play like, I am angry in a very funny way, which I think is great. Like he loses his patience so well with everybody and like has some great tantrums in this, which I don't think we got to see him do necessarily beforehand, because he was always like kind of the sweet boy next door type. And then I'm trying to think, Splash was before this, wasn't it?
I think Splash was before this.
Yeah. So again, romantic leads kind of thing, but he'd never been slightly, because he's not a bad person in this, and he's not the bad guy.
No.
He's just a little off. And I don't think we'd got to see, for the better part of it, I'm trying to say, we've never seen Tom Hanks be crazy before. And in this, he goes slightly unhinged.
Yeah, there's a bit more of the range is very definitely on display with it. I think what we don't get enough of in this is Carrie Fisher. She's woefully underused. Very, very competent, very, very good. And, you know, as a kind of straight kind of figure, it's just nice moments. But again, I feel that there could be more of that. I mean, it's the age-old problem about writing scripts for you know, and giving parts to women, is that at this point in Hollywood, they're quite frankly shite at it.
Yeah.
And she isn't given enough. And I don't think this is one of the films that she did script doctoring on either.
No. I'm pretty sure no, she didn't. But again, she does ground the film, but as you said, I think I could do with more of it, because for me, it is... I don't mind screwball comedy. I don't mind like high energy comedy. I call it screwball comedy, but it's more high energy, like kind of dark comedy things where you've got men kind of being high pitched and yelly at each other. I don't mind that so much, as long as I have something to ground it. I feel like Carrie Fisher does have those moments, but as you said, there's just not enough of them for me to keep me fully in it. Because again, I did find myself on a rewatch getting vaguely annoyed at points where I'm like, this is a lot of like high energy stuff happening, and like it's almost acidic. I need like a wee Tums of Carrie Fisher just to be like, and we're bringing the energy down just for a second, and then we can go back up and go for our insane running around camping adventure or like whatever we're doing kind of thing. Also more dog. Always have more dog in the film.
There's 2 dogs in this, so you know it's got double the dog.
Double dog.
Double dog. No, I mean, I think for me it's a very effective study. I am very aware that I have little to complain about with it. I mean, there's a point at which I feel things get a bit rushed, but then that's often the way that finales kind of go for me, and then it just blows up, quite literally. But it, you know, the whole thing just kind of spreads out even more, and I suppose that's where we kind of get our kind of double ending, as the chaos and the fallout kind of ensues, and Tom Hanks is sort of going from believing to non-believing to disorientation to just glad that he has the spouse that somehow puts up with him.
Yeah.
Which sort of does feel very Simpsons-like.
Yeah, I feel like it. I feel like a mark of a... They say, like, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I feel like the Burbs has been... Maybe not unfairly, but, like, has been parodied or... certainly been an inspiration for a lot of instances, especially I would say in TV, like and animated television in particular. And again, it's one of those films for me that strikes me as people who write comedy really love this film, and you can see why. It's like it's done really, really well, but there are just like moments where you're like, in it's not The Simpsons, I think it's in Family Guy. There's like a whole Burbs section in like one of the earlier seasons. And you don't know it's the Burbs unless you've seen it. And very few people I know have actually seen the Burbs. Wow. Because I think it was a big deal. in the early 90s, but like a lot of my friends either don't watch films the way that I watch films, which is obsessively all the time. So, and it hasn't overly been on television an awful lot in the last wee while. Maybe in the early 90s. I feel like it was on Channel 4 quite a lot for a while.
I'm not sure if it's ended up on ITV
Yeah.
4 or whatever, you never know. Could be on every night. I think for me, there's something quite timeless about it too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, apart from the slight racial stereotyping with the Eastern Europeans, I feel that this is a film that actually still works. I feel that the fears are very real. I mean, sitting and looking at Brexit Britain, and those fears are still manifest every day on GB News, or whatever the hell it's called, with Eamon what's-his-face just sitting there ranting about them foreigners.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it feels like. So I feel that is something that I think we can all identify within ourselves. Anyone who's lived in a kind of community can appreciate that fear. And obviously there's some sort of attraction to it because this is currently being set up for a TV remake.
Yeah.
Which is...
I'm not a big fan of TV remakes, as we all know. I feel like leave it alone. But I think there is something very timeless about it. As you said, it holds up very well. Like you can watch it and... It still feels contemporary. It still feels, that's what's happened.
So Emma, the Burbs, yes, no, would you watch again?
I would watch it again. I feel like I need to watch it again, and just try and keep everything I know out of my head, if that makes any sense. Like, I wish I could rewatch it again and not know the ending. So maybe rewatch it with maybe do a clue. I'll just put the alternative ending on. No, I'd certainly watch it again. It's worth it just for those moments between Corey Feldman and Bruce Dern, because they're great. Like, just the juxtaposition of wee young Corey Feldman being a hellion and hitting on his wife, and Bruce Dern just being like, "The fuck are you doing?" It's quite fun. But yeah, I would watch it again.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. I've thoroughly enjoyed it every time I've seen it. I appreciate some of its nuances better than I did as a kid, but it still works remarkably well. And I would be surprised if most of you didn't at least get some sort of giggle out of it.
Oh, for sure, it's definitely funny.
So I guess that's us for tonight. You will, if you enjoy it, let us know what you think. Do contact us on socials. Emma, where can we find Accidental Theatre?
You can find Accidental Theatre here at Shaftesbury Square. No, we are on. We're not on that thing. Sorry. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Theatre, and we're also on YouTube as Accidental Theatre, which we are in the links below as our Cinepunked.
Cinepunked, you'll find most places as Cinepunked. On Instagram, I believe we're Cinepunked Film, or if you just want to stalk me instead, you'll find me most places as Avallard. That's us for tonight. Until the next time. Auf Wiedersehen!
Bye!